Hello, my name is Ken Small, and I'm an architect in Las Vegas, Nevada. This is part of a series of frequently asked question videos that we're posting to YouTube to help the general public understand what the process is for getting a project constructed. So today we're going to talk about permit expediting in the Las Vegas area. So suppose you have your plans in hand or you're just about to get them from whoever created them, and you expect to go running right down to the building department and get your permit today. As they say, not so fast. So there's quite a bit to be known about this, and we'll be doing a few videos explaining it. This is the first one. So for starters today, instead of talking about the plans, which is covered in my previous videos and probably some future videos also, we're going to talk about permit expediting. So let's set those plans down for a minute, and we'll hope that actually you don't have your plans ready and that this information comes to you as advanced planning so that you can set your schedule and your agreements with the landlord or the bank or whoever else is above you financially according to some real timelines for getting the permit process done. Before we get started, I should talking about the actual expediting. I want to lay the groundwork for that. And so you should understand that this is just general information, and if you need information specific to your project, please give us a call. My information will be at the end of the video. The other thing is that there are quite a few jurisdictions, different building department jurisdictions in the immediate vicinity of Las Vegas. So the most common building department that we work with is the unincorporated Clark County Building Department. And so if you think you're going to build on the Las Vegas Strip and that you're going to be in the city of Las Vegas, you probably are in unincorporated Clark County and not the city of Las Vegas. However, other building departments that are quite commonly used are the city of Las Vegas, the city of North Las Vegas, the city of Henderson, Boulder City, Nye County. Some of the smaller jurisdictions around that I won't mention are also having their own building departments. So our firm works not only in those jurisdictions, but also often in California and Arizona and occasionally in some other states. For the sake of simplicity here, I'm just going to talk about the Las Vegas area and tenant improvements. So the timelines for tenant improvements are comparable in the ability to save time to ground-up buildings and other types of projects. But since tenant improvements are a fairly generic category, what you learn in this video should be applicable to whatever else you're doing if it's not a tenant improvement. So we'll be using tenant improvements in the valley around Las Vegas as the example for this video. Now, expediting permits, in case you don't know, is really just trying to get a permit as quickly as possible. There was a day and there were places where you could go down to the building department that day and get a permit that day, but that does not exist in most jurisdictions nowadays, and unless you're dealing with little tiny towns and other states where maybe the mayor is the building official or something like that, it's a lot more complicated and nothing happens in a day for the most part. I'll give you an exception to that later on, but so that you can understand in the general process of doing things. We don't really recommend trying to do expediting because if you can just plan ahead, then one of the common jokes in the industry is let's not go planning our way out of things now when we could be buying our way out of them later on. So if you can plan the right amount of time to get through all this without extreme urgency, that's going to be helpful to your overall financial management. However, many business people who are not familiar with the timelines will need to rush their project in order to avoid making rent payments during construction, or in order to get open in time for a seasonal deadline. Say you're a retailer, you need to be open in time for the Christmas holidays or something like that. Or maybe you just have some bosses who are in another part of the country and aren't particularly understanding of what your issues are and gave you a deadline, and so you have to make it. So that makes permit expediting a fairly common thing for people to do. Architects do it quite frequently, and we do. People who call the building department to find out how long it takes to get a permit normally don't get the right answer, at least according to what they're telling us. It's very common to have people tell us that they were told by the building department that they could get a permit in 2 weeks. This is very, very uncommon. It's maybe the building department is saying a minimum of 2 weeks or something like that, but we know that one particular building department lumps all commercial permits in together. So if you're an electrician who's pulling a permit to install a light fixture, then that time it took to do that is averaged with how long it takes to do an entire commercial permit. So of course the averages come down. The other words you have to listen for carefully when you're listening to building department staff tell you how long things take is what they really will probably do is get back to you or to the architect or contractor with a response to comments in 2 weeks. And so in theory, if it was a perfect set of plans, then in 2 weeks you would have a permit. But the reality of plan reviewing is that the plan reviewers always manage to find something that they think is, quote, wrong, and if they don't, then they'll tell us to copy a section of the building code onto a page so that we have to come back again. And then by the time we go and get what we need from them, from their comments, we write a response to comments saying that what they couldn't find is on page A2 or whatever, or we copy the section of the building code onto the plans, or maybe they found a legitimate mistake or something that we felt should be done differently than they did, and we take that and get it back to the building department. It then goes into the queue at the building department, and it takes them another 2 weeks to come back with the actual release of the building permit. So in my experience, and before making this video, I talked to some of my friends who are in the construction and architecture community. 4 weeks is optimistic, 6 weeks is likely for getting a tenant improvement permit. And if you're doing a ground-up project, it can be a real tremendous amount longer, depending on the issues surrounding the project, which is too complicated for us to get into in this video, but probably nowhere near close 4 to 6 weeks for a commercial ground-up project. And again, we're not talking about residential here, but what you learn in this situation will be comparable to residential, and maybe we'll do a video on that sometime. So, contrary to the optimistic claims, budget 6 weeks, and it may be longer, but that's a reasonable budget for a tenant improvement. That's an interior finish out on a building that's being remodeled, or a new tenant improvement into a vacant building that has never had a interior finish out done. Sometimes it can be done a lot quicker, and that's what permit expediting is. Sometimes it's also possible that you could hit it lucky and things could go a little bit faster, but that's not the basis of a business plan to try to hit it lucky. And this information doesn't really relate directly to our firm or how long it takes us to do things. This is just general information. Assuming you have a competent architect that has the time to spend on expediting your project, then this is typical of what you would expect to find in terms of the timelines. So it will take your architects and engineers a little time to coordinate amongst themselves before going back to the building department. So for instance, the fire department may make one comment about move this component east 2 feet, and the electrical plan reviewer may say move the same component west 2 feet. So it's not absolutely certain that you will get through on the second round of comments when they're disagreeing internally. But this is the standard procedure that's used for non-expedited permit processing, and you can expect that pretty much everywhere, every large city throughout the United States is going to be something similar to this, or even more comprehensive and time-consuming than this. So keep in mind that my assumptions here are that you have the proper zoning for the use that you're going to do. You're not trying to put an office into a house or build a restaurant where before it was say an office space without having the proper zoning, or you're going to build an industrial use in a area where you're zoned for professional offices. Something like that involving planning and zoning is another step in the process. So what we're talking about here is you get your plans, you go down to the building department, and how long do you have to wait before you actually have a permit in hand and you can tell your contractor to start construction. That's the timeline that we're looking at trying to shorten. So some of these jurisdictions have specific processes for expediting, but in almost all cases it's discretionary on the part of the building department whether they're going to even accept your project for expediting or not. So most departments have a disclaimer that says if we're busy, we just can't take it. A lot of building departments will look for individual staff within their department who are willing to accept overtime to work more than the usual 40 hours a week, which you will pay extra for in order for that individual within the city building department to do an expediting process. Some of them require a person from each department, so they'll need an electrical plan reviewer, mechanical plan reviewer, and so on. Let's talk about what we can exclude from the need to do expediting. So say that you have an office and it's in operation, and you've decided to go in and do a little remodeling. You're just adding a wall, and in the wall is an electric outlet. It's entirely possible that that plan can be reviewed in what's called an over-the-counter process. And the way that most building departments weigh whether you will be able to do an over-the-counter process is how many trades are involved. So if where you're building the wall substantially affects fire exiting, they might say no, even though it's just one wall. But if you're building a small wall and it's not very significant in terms of its location, and there's just one electric outlet added to it, then depending on the mood of the moment when you come down there, they may very well just say, yes, we'll review it over the counter, and bang, you're done in one day. So that's an over-the-counter review, and it does not require expediting. We would take it down to the building department if you hire us to do that, and try to talk to the review staff and see if we can get them to accept it. But even so, if you arrive down there at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning and there's a big line, they may tell you no, and they want to do what we call intake it, which means that they check it in and it sits in the queue, and then you hope they get to it. So you have to know a little bit more than just wander down there at any random moment to be able to get even that to work. A lot of sub-trades like electricians and plumbers and what have you should be pulling permits for little things. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But say, for instance, you decided to add a security light on the outside of your building where it's very, very visible where they're working. The electrician will more than likely have enough sense to go down to the building department because everybody's driving up and down the road and can see him working and pull a permit for it. And for that, he may not even actually be requested to submit plans. He just goes down and pays whatever it is, 50 or 100 bucks, and gets a permit to install a light fixture, and all that's done in a relatively minimal amount of time, and then he's ready to go on with his work. So the other thing that you should know about going down to the building department is that there's one building department right now that we commonly go to where you don't have this take a number kind of system like they have at DMV, and you get a number V135 or X228. You can just go in there and they'll say have a seat and we'll call you when you're next. But the others, certainly unincorporated Clark County, they have a computer that you go to and you type in or click on this and that to tell exactly what you're down there for, and then you get a number in the queue, and then depending on which staff member knows how to process that thing that you need, you're in line. And so even for your electrician, pulling a permit for one light fixture being added on the outside of your building, you should expect to have to pay 2 or 3 hours for him to do that. He has to drive over there, he has to sit and wait to have his number called, and then he has to explain and get the permit and pay the money and all that, and then after that drive back. So each time that somebody has to go down there costs time and money. It's probably worth it for you to pay somebody who's a professional to go down there because they know what to say, and more importantly, they know what not to say. So if you're hoping to get through as painlessly as possible, that's the best way to do it. If you have a business to operate, that's the best way to do it. You can be minding your store and leave it to people who understand this kind of process to do the processing. But if not, if you have a lot of free time, then go ahead and give it a shot. Just remember when you're talking, the best thing to think about is you cannot unring the bell. So if you've told the building department the wrong thing, sometimes it's hard to convince them that you didn't really mean whatever it was that you said. And so be careful to be explicit, and we're not saying that we'll be dishonest on your behalf, but we're aware that certain keywords and phrases send up red flags to the building department, and so for instance, you're not really dealing with the IRS type of staff. They're generally cooperative, but still, once you give them a suspicion that there's a problem or there may be some fire danger or what have you, then you're being scrutinized more carefully going forward. So you can help yourself in saving a little time going down there by yourself, and you can also hurt yourself if you're not pretty careful. And always remember when you're down there, a lot of this is about relationships, and whether they want to do something to you or not can have something to do with whether the plan reviewer is having a good day or a bad day. And it's never a good idea to be the source of a bad day to another person, particularly if they're with the building department and they're going to be coming out to inspect your project or talking to who comes out to inspect your project. So this is the background information for the expediting process, and in the next video I'm going to go into the details of how expediting works specifically now that you've got the background understanding of how the normal process works, and that video will be up next. My name is Ken Small, and I'm a licensed architect in Las Vegas, Nevada. I've been in the location that we show on our address here for 20 years now, and practicing for even longer. So we're hopeful that if you watch this video and you think it's valuable, first of all, you'll like it down below and share it in YouTube. And second of all, you'll come and visit with us. The initial consultation in our office about any project is always free, and so I hope you'll come by and visit with myself or one of my staff members to talk about what it is you're trying to do, and we can help you work your project to your best advantage. Thanks for watching, and our number is 702-873-1718.